Well, we're glad you're joining in today. My name is David Baker, and I'm part of the teaching team here at Vital Point Church, and I'm also a site leader of our Exeter location. Today, I'm joined by our lead pastor, Ron Baker, and we're kicking off a brand new series called Verse 19. And we're playing with the thing that's been in front of our faces in our world right now, COVID-19, but we're tuning this 3-week series around verse 19. If you haven't noticed, COVID is everywhere. It's a world pandemic, but something about this world pandemic, if you haven't noticed, fear, anxiety, and worry have been skyrocketing in our world. Families and friends and workplaces are being crippled by this, but this is the thing. What we believe as a church, we don't want to be blind to all of these things. We have to respect the levels of keeping our distance and making sure that we work together to flatten the curve. But the worry and fear and anxiety are something interesting to pay attention to. And as a church, we believe that what would happen if we began to fix our eyes and our hearts and our minds on things of the Bible, the truths of the Bible that would be able to give us power, give us strength, give us a hope in this time of a world pandemic. And Ron and I want to invite you into this series, a 3-week series, where we're going to look at verses from the Bible that are verse 19s. That's how we got the name of this series. And I got to give it to Ron with the creative idea, but he found some very powerful verses that are very timely for our lives right now, that can give us strength, that can give us power in this time where we can walk with a courage and hope. Week 3, we're going to be looking at Philippians 4:19, where we're going to talk about the certainty that God can provide in uncertain times. Week 2, next week, we're going to be looking at Ephesians 3:19, where we're going to talk about the depth of God's love, no matter what. And this week is a very powerful conversation that I'm excited about, all around Isaiah 43:19. And we're going to talk about the new things that can come out of this. And I want to read these verses for you, but I'm going to read 18 and 19 because it sets it up so well. It says, "But forget all that. It is nothing compared to what I'm going to do. For I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland." Ron, we've been going through this time of COVID for about 2 months now, which is crazy to think. And it's been a wild ride, but you and I have been talking about it, discussing it, studying it, and the big question that arises out of this time is, and I want to ask you right now, do you think God caused this on the world?
Well, you know what, David? First of all, thank you for agreeing to do the interview-style teaching. We just really felt that it was important for us to come at this in a different way for those who are participating at Vital Point online. It is the question a lot of people will be asking and are asking, did God cause this? And the answer to that is, I don't know. I know that that's probably something that doesn't help at all, but people are probably looking for a more defined answer around that. I think a bigger question that we need to ask ourselves is this question around, do we believe that God is sovereign or not? That's something that I've been wondering about a little bit. And the sovereignty of God is not something that we talk a lot about in the context of church that much, but it's a word that we use to define God. The word sovereign carries with this idea that God is all-powerful and nothing happens outside of his authority. So when you look at the Bible and the teachings of the Bible doesn't try to prove the existence of God. It just anticipates that we understand that God exists, and it defines for us his authority and his power. So you would see this in writings like in Revelations. You would see this in writings like Colossians or even Romans. Even Isaiah 43, the passage that you read prior to this, Isaiah writes about the depth of God's knowledge, and our understanding of that cannot be understood. So basically, that helps us understand that in the full authority and power of God, God's not accountable to anyone. And I think that's an important distinction for us as we try to navigate through this season of understanding that question that you asked. Now, there is a piece of this that I want to address that I don't know if it's going to be helpful or not, or it may cause some more questions. But early on in this season of COVID-19, I was doing my own reflection, my own reading on some of these things, and I was reading through 2 Chronicles, I believe it's around 2 Chronicles 15, verses 5 and 6. And very true to God's people in the Old Testament, you would find that they would wander away from their promise. And that's sort of what Isaiah 43 is leaning towards as well. But they would lean away from their obedience to God. And what you begin to understand in the 2 Chronicles 15 section, it says this one little verse. It says that God created all kinds of problems for them, different kind of problems for them. And that's a very interesting verse because there's a piece of understanding God or trying to grasp who God is that God sees our lives. He understands our lives. And he sees them from a perspective that we don't see. So there's times where God may try to arrange circumstances or allow circumstances to bring about his plan in our lives and to, at times, redirect us. And that's a thought that we don't often like to go into because we just think that God is all about the God who makes everything better and all things are going to be good. And that's what we have a perspective on God. But the sovereignty and the understanding of God is that he sees our lives, and there are times that he will allow things or even at times create things like that 2 Chronicles passage where he uses it to redirect us. One of the things that I love about this moment in the answer to this question, I know I'm going about it all over the map here, but is that this moment we find ourselves in did not catch God off guard. Okay, that's something that we must hold on to in the midst of this first part of our conversation about God doing a new thing. God didn't wake up one day, because God doesn't wake up. He is God, and go, oh my goodness, I didn't see this coming. Now what do I do? And this is good for us to understand this even in our own individual lives. And the sovereignty of God is that when there is problems in your life, when maybe you lose your job or you lose your income or your family struggles or difficulties or whatever it might be, it's not like God goes, oh, I didn't see that coming. Is that God sees these things and understands these things, and sometimes he does create things, and sometimes he does permit things, and I think we have to be okay with that. And that's where I think in our exploring of faith and even in trying to develop a stronger root system in our faith, we must find ourselves on that ground, on that foundation to say, okay, God is sovereign, he's all powerful, all authority is his, and nothing catches him off guard. And so I think that that's an important aspect of understanding the new thing that God is doing.
I think that's interesting that when you say this COVID season that has taken our world,
right,
that it didn't surprise him.
Right.
I think that is a beautiful thing for us as individuals, people exploring faith, trying to grow in their faith, that if we can understand that or try to understand that the creator of this universe isn't surprised by this, but he will bring something new out of this.
Yes.
I think that kind of lets the weight off our shoulders a little bit.
Yeah.
So my next question for you is, with what this verse talks about, that he will create something new out of this, what do you see being the new thing?
So I want to address this from a 30,000-foot view.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this from a church perspective, okay? Because this is a very interesting time, and church leaders from all around the world are trying to figure out what is it that God is doing. So I'm in a coaching group on Tuesday nights at 5 o'clock with 30 different pastors and leaders from around the world, literally from around the world, and we're talking, we're listening. I've been listening to podcasts, and I've been talking to other church leaders. It's the million-dollar question: what is actually happening here? What is it, this new thing that God is doing? The word that a lot of people are using is the word renewal. Mm-hmm. It's the word that I hear a lot, and I have a sense that this is what God is doing in the new thing, is he's bringing about a renewal. When you look at the verse 18 and verse 19 of Isaiah 43, what you begin to see is that God, through Isaiah was a prophet, and he was the voice of God for God's people. He was bringing them back to a time when God delivered them from Egypt. This is the first verses leading up to 19, where he's saying, this is what I did. And then it says, but forget all that because I'm doing a new thing. When you look at the thread of God's working through the Bible and through history, you begin to realize that God is about doing a new thing. When you look at an individual life and you see someone who is dead in their sin, which the Bible talks about, he gives us new life through Jesus. And so what was dead is now alive. What was in darkness is now in light. What is so beautiful about this, and as it relates to the church, is that there is something new that is happening that many of us are looking at now and realizing that there is a renewal that God is doing in church history right now that we are all looking at through this lens of, wow, this is big. This is way bigger than what we ever anticipated. So when we go into this season of COVID-19, we were all pivoting and trying to get online, but now we're all looking at it from a different perspective, going, wow, there's something bigger happening here within the church.
Yeah, globally, right?
Yes.
And that's what's so beautiful about this, now being able to pivot and shift online. You hear leaders now emerging up that are very in tune with what's going on and the sensing of the renewal that you're talking about. You've turned me on to a guy named Stephen Fogg. He's a church online guru, basically. And we were part of a conference online with him last week, and he uses the phrase an apostolic advancement.
Right.
Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
And when I first heard this phrase, apostolic advancement, I thought it was very interesting. As I said, churches globally, every church globally, whether they had an online presence or not, went online. Like within days. Many of us fumbled. Vital Point, even though we were online we've been online for 4 years, there was a piece of it where we were, pivoting ourselves. The apostolic advancement is this. We're no longer trying to just survive the online. Now we're seeing online as here to stay. And the apostolic advancement is the initiative of God bringing about a movement, an advancement of his kingdom in this world through technology. And I like this, and I'm intrigued by this because this whole online thing is not going anywhere, and churches now have to look at it through the lens of how do we restructure and allow ourselves to not only have maybe a physical site, but now an online site.
Okay, so with this whole renewal of an apostolic advancement of what's now not going away, the online church it's here to stay. People are saying that you're reading it, you're studying it. How do we use this? So how can we fill in that new wave of the apostolic advancement?
The apostolic advancement is this fresh new move of God, this new thing. And what we're discovering and what we're learning is that yes, online is here to stay. So how do we then use the online platforms to expand and grow God's church and what he's doing? So there's a phrase that I've been hearing a lot. It's this thing called microsites. And so Vital Point Church, for those of you who are not aware, we're a multi-site church. We are a portable church that has 2 locations, physical locations, one in Exeter, one in London. And what we're now looking at is these things called microsites. And this is just right now in the infant stages of learning. But the microsites are these smaller gatherings of 40 to 50, 60 people that take the Sunday morning physical gathering, let's say the Sunday morning experience, shortening it down to 30, 35 minutes. And then these microsites are popping up all over the world. So let's talk about it from a Vital Point Church perspective. Vital Point Church perspective is this. We now can see this as the possibility of the expansion not only in Ontario, but across Canada, and what you and I have talked about globally. So someone tracks with Vital Point Church or any other church, and they see the things that are happening, they can create these microsites. What is so great about this is that it takes the church and plants it into neighborhoods, into smaller towns, into sections of cities where the movement of God can happen in very powerful ways in these microsites. It could be 40, 50 people. There's one church in the States that we're following right now that actually has a microsite in a prison.
Yeah.
And the microsite leader is actually an inmate who became a follower of Jesus, and now he's leading that microsite. So you begin to realize is that the church is now, and this apostolic advancement is no longer just simply gathering on Sunday mornings. It's now being pushed outward into smaller neighborhoods, towns, and sections of cities. And I find that exciting. I find it exhilarating. I find it scary. And my heart races when I think about it. But the reality is this is the new thing that God is doing. Don't keep looking at the past. Look forward.
And he says that, but forget it all, right?
Yeah.
The leading verses up to this is basically giving the resume of what God has done.
But now he's doing a new thing.
Now he's doing a new thing, which can push us farther into a global impact, right?
Right.
And now that you've kind of said it, it's in the infant stages of thinking of microsites.
Yeah.
What does that look like for the church globally, us in this area, in our region?
Right.
How does that affect our Sunday morning gatherings when we do get the lift of, hey, you can finally get back to your 200 people, or whatever it is?
Right.
What does that look like for our Sunday morning gathering? Is it here to stay as well?
So let me look at it, Sunday morning gatherings from this new thing that God's doing. There are some church leaders out there that are saying Sunday morning gatherings are a thing of the past.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
I don't want to be there yet.
I'm not there. I don't believe that Sunday morning physical gatherings of a few hundred people is a thing of the past. And
why
here's
though?
why.
Why?
I think here's the reason why. I believe that we're designed to worship. I believe that we're designed to link arms with other people, and once social distancing is lifted, physical distancing is lifted, and the expression of worship. There is something powerful, and I know that people can worship in 10, 12, 15 people in a room. I get that, but there's something about the corporate Sunday gathering that I'm not convinced is going to go away. But here's the thing that church leaders are talking about. And if you're new to church and you're going like, this is going like, I don't even know what you're talking about, just stay with us for a second. I was talking to a pastor just recently in a town close to where I live, and she was saying that she had read an article that a person had written about chess. And when you remove the queen from a chess game, you have to learn how to play the game differently with the different pieces.
Yeah.
And I think Sunday morning for right now has been stripped away from us.
That was our queen.
It's been stripped away from us. And now we're being forced to re-examine and look at our church from a different perspective, and how can we utilize the different pieces that are available to us to advance God's mission in this world. And that mission, that vision is to reach people who are far from him, to be his hands and feet. I mean, we as a church right now, we're physically meeting the needs of people. We're serving in our cities. We're meeting the needs physically. We're dropping food off. We're providing internet for people that don't have internet.
I've dropped off a computer at someone's house.
Computers homes so that people can. So we're forced out into community in a way like we've never been before. And not that we weren't doing those things, but it's more. It's stronger now. So I really love the fact that we're examining this from this perspective. And, I don't think Sunday mornings are a thing of the past. I'm not in that camp because I believe that it's a critical piece of who we are. And I don't think that's ever going to go away.
I think, too,
unless we can't. I think that's the other thing. If we can't, honestly, if the government doesn't allow us to gather more than 50 people, we're going to have to seriously look at the microsites. And what can we do to produce content and teachings and music that can go into these microsite experiences until that is lifted and we're able to gather physically again?
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is when you start tossing that idea around or begin to brainstorm with a group of people of what this could look like, how could this empower new leaders and more people to step into a role of impacting their community. And I guess what I want to ask you is how does a person that's watching this morning be like, wow, that's something that I could really get on board with. Like I really see a movement of God working in these microsites where if it is God creating this new thing like this, how do we attach ourselves to this plan? Like how does an individual sitting here be like, yeah, how do I walk in that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say this. If you're a person that's maybe new, to Vital Point. Someone shared this church with you, and you're just online for maybe the first time or second time, and you're kind of like, wow, I'm kind of intrigued by this. Something inside of you is happening. We would define you as someone who's exploring. I would say keep exploring. Keep coming to Vital Point online. Watch our YouTube channel. Like, God is using some of our vital moments in powerful ways, and we're going to eventually share some of those stories with you. But if you're exploring faith, keep asking the questions and looking for the answers. I would say sign up for Alpha. We're starting Alpha on Tuesday night, just a couple nights from now. And Alpha is this online course you can take right from your home. It's beautiful. It's designed, it's an hour and a half once a week. It's going to come right into your home. It's a fantastic opportunity for you to do that. Now, I will say this to you. If you're part of Vital Point Church, I would say pray. Begin to pray.
Yeah.
I'm watching this happen in a very big way, David. There are people right now, this renewal thing that we've been talking about, I mean, we set our alarms for 12 p.m. Every day. Our phones go off, and we say a short prayer. I've been in meetings with people on Zoom. My phone alarm goes off. I just shut it off, and I do a quick prayer for renewal. We are seeing a move of God, a new thing of God. The church for right now is retreated a bit, and now it's moving forward. Mark Sayers talks about this. It's coming through. Pray about this. Literally pray about this. Find yourself in a place where you're praying privately, where you're intentionally praying about what is God doing in your life? What is God doing? I would say pray for the leadership of Vital Point. We have to have wisdom, but we also have to discernment. We want to be able to discern what it is that God is actually doing with Vital Point Church. Microsites, David, I don't know.
Yeah, we have no idea.
I don't know, but it's intriguing. It's like if someone were watching this right now and they're saying, I live in Timbuktu, Canada, and you're watching this. I don't even know if there's Timbuktu.
I have no idea.
If there's Timbuktu and you're like, Microsites, I'm in. Contact us. We'll see what we can do. We've got phenomenal editing teams that can put together fast-forward versions of a Sunday experience, and we can microsite it. Begin praying about it. I believe that God is raising up, you said it, God is raising up brand new young leaders like yourself and others. That God is shoulder tapping right now, saying, I want you to be part of this apostolic advancement. No longer sitting in the seats, no longer just sitting at home.
And consuming.
You're now going to be a contributor, and I believe that that's a piece of it. The other thing I'll say this, and some of you need to hear this. Just because we're not gathering on Sunday doesn't mean the church has stopped. The church is never closed, which means there's financial realities to the apostolic advancement of God's work, which means those who are followers of Jesus need to consider and pray, what are they going to do with the resources that God has given to them, no matter how big or how small, and we give that back to Him. Desiree and I, we've been giving extra in this season of time because we're not going out for dinners, we're not traveling. So we've got a little bit of an extra income right now, and we're not spending as much. So we're giving extra to the advancement of God's kingdom. The apostolic advancement needs God's people to get behind it financially. And please don't misunderstand me. This is not a pitch to get more money for Vital Point Church. It's not, but it's for the advancement of God's work in this world. And I love what God is doing. There are people that are doing this right now. So lots going on. I could talk all day about it.
I know you could. Something that, what you're saying is, I think, needs to be said. A lot of people do need to hear that, right? Of this apostolic advancement. And something that comes to my mind that I'm feeling and sensing about this apostolic advancement is it's going to take a lot of prayer, like you said. And so if you are listening today, set your alarm for 12 o'clock. Yeah. Like, join that movement.
12 p.m.
12 p.m. Join the movement of prayer, because it's going to take a prayer culture for us to align with the blessings that God wants to create at this new. I think He says rivers in this dry wasteland. Yeah, I love that. The imagery, it can be scary, and He wants to create a river out of this. But I think what is so beautiful about this, and I heard an amazing teacher say, it's going to take surrender in this time.
Right.
And the surrender is actually the door hinges to the door that God's going to open to something new.
Wow.
So instead of being the doorknob, not trying to call anyone a doorknob, but instead of being the doorknob that holds the door back, let's be the hinges of surrender, so the door can open clean for this brand
so
new
that
thing.
new thing that God is doing will come through the lives of those who learn to surrender to the work of the Holy Spirit in their lives. And some people watching this may not be there yet, but there's this aspect of saying, I'm in. I've had this friend of mine say to me, Ron, I'm all in.
Cool.
He's a brand new followers of Jesus, like just about a week long, and he said, like, I'm all in, which is the surrender.
Yeah, Ron, thanks so much for the conversation.
Absolutely.
Today.
It's great.
It's great to talk about the future. It's great to talk about the present, and we just wanna be a part of this movement of what God's doing new here. So thank you for today.
Yeah, we want to hear and experience God's blessing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem.